I'm thinking typically that when a kid comes to college, depending on their background and how much they've had to do with a college or a university, they're a little bit nervous about it. They sign up for the class, they get their books, they come to class, and their goal is, I've got to survive this face-to-face experience with this faculty member. Obviously, he's a highly intelligent person, and I'm just a brand new person at this whatever, and I'm afraid I'm going to make an idiot of myself because I haven't got a clue what's going on here. And so I hide this by sitting in the back of the class or not making eye contact with the teacher or adopting other body language behaviors that kind of keep me out of the firing line, so to speak. And then after the class is over, then I go home and I try to figure out, oh, what went on today? And of course, we're at BYU, we've got kids from 70 nations. So in my class, I'm going to have kids from Asia, kids from the Pacific, kids from the mainland, kids from Hawaii. And while schools are typically the same, there are some differences, you know. And I'm thinking with this prepare, engage, improve kind of concept, it puts the onus on us as the teachers to kind of know a lot about the kids and where they're from, so that we can start firing little connecting fibers into their lives and into their experiences, so that they can see that I understand them and that they have had experiences that really relate to what I'm talking about or we're talking about in class. So by now, they've had a lot of different teachers, they've had several different schools, they've had a lot of different classrooms, and so whether they admit to it or not, they actually have some really definite opinions on things in education. And since my class is an introduction to education class, you know, I try to get them to bring those experiences and opinions out. And of course, they've got a lot of them. Well, every kid can remember some terrible thing that happened in a school, in a classroom that they were in terms of classroom management. Sometimes it's something a teacher did, sometimes it's something that students did. So, you know, I can have them bring that, share that, and participate. If it's instructor-led, then only a few kids are going to share. But if it's grouped up, you mix them up like that, they get some interesting insights. The way I organized the class was I found some small lessons, like 10-minute lessons on topics that people typically don't know about, and then divided them up into groups, and then they had to prepare the lesson in 10 minutes, deliver the lesson in 10 minutes, and then get taught the other group's lesson in 10 minutes. And so it was more of a practical problem-solving experience about what are the realities of preparing and delivering lessons, rather than sitting around talking about it and trying to imagine it and then knowing all about it. You can't beat actually doing it. And typically when they get to the end, they say, wow, I've never heard of an acrostic before, I've never heard of a clerehew, or I didn't realize an arrow had all of these different parts on it, or a castle had all these different places in it. But I just didn't have enough time to prepare, you know. Well, one of the problems with teaching is that when you train a teacher and you set them out to get a license and start teaching, they have the possibility of being a teacher for 30 to 40 years. And a lot of things are going to change in 30 to 40 years. And so when I began teaching, it was kind of like a textbook, an exercise book, a blackboard, and an overhead projector. And so when I got an overhead projector with an acetate roll that I could scroll along like that, I thought that was really fantastic. That was a real move forward. Well, now we're in a world with learning management systems like Canvas, and so we can put so much of the course structure and content there so that students can access it. So you're not handing out stuff in class, you're not giving instructions in class, you're not following up on things in class, you're not explaining grades in class. So much of that can now be done. And so that's kind of the way it is now. You know, it's new for me because that's not where I started at. But it's the beginning point for these teachers. I like to draw a triangle on the board, and at the top is hear, see, and do. and it's called a learning triangle or a learning pyramid. The theory behind it is that people remember 10% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, but 90% of what they do. I write an article about a cow's eye. I went to Kahuku High School and I watched the science class dissect cows' eyes. And, you know, well, it's a lab, see? So you've got all these safety concerns. You don't want anybody cutting their fingers off and doing all these kind of things. So you've got to manage that without that getting in the way of learning something from the cow's eye. Well, they should say, after they're done, why is it built that way? Why isn't it built another way? You know, and kind of get past the lab into the so what kind of thing. But often we get so engaged in the mechanics of what we're doing and get the lab completed without somebody cutting their finger off or stuff spread all over the floor and all those kinds of things that we don't actually get to the end point of why were we doing this in the first place and what was the point of it. And so I think that's the challenge of teaching, is to get the kids from here to there and saying, wow, how does that work for me?